Every night, without exception, you travel somewhere that no map can show. You leave behind the familiar physics of waking life and enter a region where time behaves strangely, identity dissolves, and reality itself becomes unstable. You do this more reliably than you eat or breathe. You do it whether you are rich or poor, young or old, believer or skeptic. And yet, by morning, almost all memory of this journey has vanished. You wake up with only fragments, a feeling, a shadow, sometimes nothing at all. This is not a metaphor, it is not spiritual poetry. It is a measurable, biological, and deeply mysterious process that has shaped human consciousness for as long as our species has existed. Every night, your brain disconnects you from the external universe and constructs an entirely private one, a place governed by different rules. A place your waking mind is not designed to access. For centuries, people believed this place was a doorway to gods, demons, or prophecy. Later, science dismissed it as meaningless noise. Today, neuroscience has realized something unsettling. This place may be one of the most important environments the human mind ever enters. A place where memories are rewritten, fears are rehearsed, identities are tested, and the future is quietly prepared. You go there every night. You spend hours inside it. Your brain works harder there than at almost any other time, and yet you almost never remember it. The mystery is not that this place exists. The mystery is why your mind works so hard to keep it hidden. Because if you remembered everything that happened there, you might not wake up the same person. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to The Boring Universe, like this video if you enjoy deep science storytelling, and leave a comment telling us which part of the country you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Every night, the human brain performs one of the most dramatic transformations in nature. Without warning, without permission, and without conscious awareness, it withdraws you from the external world and seals you inside yourself. Muscles shut down. Sensory input is muted. The chemistry of the brain shifts. Electrical rhythms reorganize. The conscious narrator you rely on to experience reality goes offline. From the outside, you appear still, quiet, unmoving. But inside your skull, something extraordinary is happening. Sleep is not a passive state. It is not the brain turning off. It is the brain entering a different mode of existence. Modern imaging has revealed that during certain phases of sleep, especially during rapid eye movement sleep, the brain consumes nearly as much energy as it does when you are awake. Some regions become even more active. The visual cortex lights up. Emotional centers surge. Memory systems fire in coordinated waves. This is the place you go every night. To understand it, we have to let go of the idea that consciousness is a single, stable thing. Consciousness is a process, not a location. When you are awake, your brain constructs a model of reality by constantly integrating sensory input, memory, prediction, and emotion. That model feels seamless, continuous, real, but it is fragile. Sleep reveals this fragility by removing the external anchors. As sensory input fades, the brain does not stop modeling reality. It simply turns inward. It uses memory instead of perception, emotion instead of logic, association instead of causality. What emerges is a private universe that feels real while you are inside it, yet dissolves the moment you leave. This raises a fundamental question that haunted philosophers long before neuroscience existed. If a world feels real while you are experiencing it, what does reality even mean? Ancient cultures treated this nightly realm with reverence and fear. In Mesopotamia, dreams were considered messages from gods. In ancient Greece, entire temples were dedicated to dream incubation, where people slept in sacred spaces hoping for divine visions. Indigenous cultures across the Americas believed dreams were journeys of the soul, literal travels to other layers of existence. These interpretations were not naive. They were attempts to explain something profoundly strange: the mind's ability to generate complete realities without external input. Science eventually stripped dreams of their supernatural framing, but it did not make them less mysterious. In many ways, it made them more unsettling. Because the deeper we look, the clearer it becomes that the place you go every night is not a random hallucination. It is structured, purposeful, and deeply tied to who you are. The transition begins slowly. As you fall asleep, the brain's electrical activity shifts from fast, irregular beta waves to slower alpha waves. Awareness fades. Thoughts become fragmented. Images drift in and out. This is the borderland, the threshold between waking and sleeping. Hypnagogia. In this state, the brain loosens its grip on logic. Associations become fluid. Sounds may morph into images. Thoughts may appear as voices. For a brief moment, the boundary between imagination and perception dissolves. Then comes the descent. As sleep deepens the thalamus, a key sensory relay station reduces its communication with the cortex. The external world is effectively blocked. Meanwhile, the brainstem begins to regulate muscle paralysis, preventing the body from acting out the internal world being constructed. You are cut off. What follows is not emptiness. It is construction. During REM sleep, the brain reactivates memory fragments from across your life. Faces you barely remember. Places you haven't visited in years. Emotions that were never fully processed. These fragments are stitched together into narratives that feel meaningful, even when they make no logical sense. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for critical thinking and reality checking, is relatively quiet. The limbic system, responsible for emotion, is highly active. This imbalance explains why dreams feel intense, symbolic, and emotionally charged, yet rarely rational. You accept impossible events without question. You feel fear without danger. You experience loss without consequence. Inside this place, the rules are different. Time does not behave linearly. A dream lasting seconds can feel like hours. Multiple locations can coexist. Identity can shift. You can be both observer and participant. The brain is not simulating the external universe. It is exploring internal possibility space. This is not accidental. Evolution does not waste energy on pointless processes. Sleep consumes nearly a third of the human lifespan. REM sleep, in particular, is metabolically expensive. If this nightly journey served no purpose, natural selection would have eliminated it. Instead, it preserved it across mammals, birds, and even some reptiles. Why? One answer lies in memory. During sleep, the brain consolidates experiences, transferring information from short-term storage in the hippocampus to long-term networks across the cortex. But this process is not a simple recording. It is an active reorganization. Memories are strengthened, weakened, linked, or discarded. The place you go every night is where your past is quietly rewritten. Another answer lies in emotion. Dreams allow the brain to simulate threatening or stressful scenarios without physical risk. This idea, known as the threat simulation theory, suggests that dreams evolved as a kind of mental training ground, a place to rehearse danger, to feel fear safely, to practice responses. But there is a deeper layer that science is only beginning to understand. When the brain constructs the dream world, it is not just replaying memories. It is generating predictions. The same predictive machinery that allows you to navigate the waking world is turned inward. The brain tests models of reality, identity, and possibility. In this sense, the place you go every night may be where your mind experiments with who you could become. This has unsettling implications. If your waking self is only one version of you, stabilized by sensory input and social constraints, then the dreaming mind is less constrained, more fluid. It explores alternate emotional states, alternate choices, alternate outcomes. You forget these explorations by morning, not because they are meaningless, but because remembering them might destabilize the carefully constructed narrative of who you believe you are. Memory is not just about storage. It is about control. Neuroscience has shown that the brain actively suppresses dream recall. Neurochemicals like norepinephrine, essential for forming stable memories, are dramatically reduced during REM sleep. The brain is chemically configured to prevent long-term encoding of dream experiences. This is not a flaw, it is a feature. If every dream were remembered with the same clarity as waking life, the boundary between internal simulation and external reality would blur. The mind would struggle to maintain coherence. Identity could fracture. The price of stability is forgetting. Yet traces remain. Dreams influence mood, creativity, problem-solving, and emotional regulation. Studies have shown that people deprived of REM sleep experience heightened anxiety, impaired learning, and emotional instability. Something essential happens in that hidden place, even when you remember nothing. This suggests a paradox at the heart of human consciousness. The most influential experiences of your mind occur in a state you cannot directly access or fully recall. You live your waking life shaped by something you barely know exists. Philosophers once asked whether we could ever be certain we were awake. The modern question may be more disturbing. How much of who you are is determined while you are not? Every night, you surrender control. You enter a place where the brain speaks to itself in a language older than words, a place that shaped human myths, religions, and fears long before science had names for neurons or neurotransmitters. You return by morning, functional and coherent, carrying only vague impressions. But the journey has already done its work. The place you go every night does not need you to remember it. It only needs you to enter. The place you go every night is not empty, abstract, or chaotic. It is structured. It has rules. It has architecture. The problem is that those rules are not designed for conscious inspection. They are designed for function. When neuroscience first began peering into the sleeping brain, researchers expected to find quiet. What they found instead was orchestration. Electrical signals moving in waves, regions activating in precise sequences, information flowing along pathways refined by millions of years of evolution. Sleep, especially the dreaming state, was not a shutdown. It was a different operating system. To understand this place, it helps to understand what the waking brain is constantly doing. At every moment you are awake, your brain is predicting the future. Not in a mystical sense, but in a biological one. It builds expectations about what will happen next based on past experience, and then compares those expectations to incoming sensory data. When the prediction matches reality, everything feels smooth and effortless. When it doesn't, the brain updates its model. This predictive machinery is the foundation of perception itself. You do not passively receive reality. You actively generate it. Sleep does not turn this machinery off. It removes the external correction signal. With the senses disconnected, the brain continues predicting, but now it has nothing to test those predictions against except its own internal data. Memories, emotions, fears, habits, unresolved conflicts. The result is a self-generated reality that feels convincing, because the same systems that make waking life feel real are still running. This is why dreams do not feel like imagination while you are inside them. They feel like experience. Inside this unseen world, the brain explores probability rather than actuality. It tests scenarios without consequences. It exaggerates emotional significance while ignoring physical plausibility. It rearranges cause and effect because causal accuracy is not the goal. Adaptive insight is. This internal world is built from fragments of your life, but it is not a replay. It is a synthesis. Neuroimaging studies show that during REM sleep, the hippocampus reactivates patterns associated with recent experiences. At the same time, distant memories stored across the cortex are brought back online. These memories are not retrieved intact. They are decomposed into elements and recombined in novel ways. This is why a dream can take place in a location that feels familiar but does not exist. Why a person can look like someone you know but behave like someone else. Why emotions feel exaggerated or displaced. The brain is not telling a story. It is searching a solution space. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. The waking world is constrained by immediate survival demands. Sleep offers a rare opportunity for unrestricted simulation. A chance to ask, at a neural level, what if? What if this fear returned? What if this bond broke? What if this threat appeared again? What if this desire was fulfilled? What if this identity shifted? These questions are not verbal. They are experiential. Inside the unseen world, the brain runs these simulations at scale. It compresses time. It accelerates emotional learning. It extracts patterns that would take weeks or months to recognize consciously. This may be why sleep plays such a powerful role in insight. Solutions to complex problems often appear after rest. Creative breakthroughs emerge overnight. Emotional clarity arrives without deliberate analysis. The work was done elsewhere. But there is a deeper layer that complicates this picture. During REM sleep, activity increases in the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system. Fear, anxiety, desire, and attachment are amplified. At the same time, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational evaluation and impulse control, is dampened. This imbalance creates a world where emotion drives perception. In the unseen place, meaning precedes logic, something feels important before it makes sense. Threats feel urgent even when they are symbolic. Loss feels real even when nothing is lost. This emotional prioritization is not accidental. Emotion is how the brain assigns value. By amplifying emotion during sleep, the brain highlights what matters most for future behavior. In other words, the unseen world is not neutral. It is biased toward relevance. This explains why dreams often return to unresolved emotional themes. Conflicts, fears, regrets, attachments. The brain is not torturing itself. It is signaling unfinished business. But it does so in a language that waking consciousness struggles to translate. Symbols emerge because symbols compress complexity. A single image can represent a network of associations too large for linear thought. This symbolic compression allows the brain to process dense emotional information efficiently. The problem is that waking minds tend to mistake symbols for messages. Throughout history, humans have tried to decode dreams as prophecies, warnings, or revelations. While these interpretations often say more about cultural beliefs than brain function, they are rooted in a real intuition something important happens in the unseen world. Science reframes this importance. Dreams are not predictions of the future, they are preparations for it. The unseen world is where emotional probabilities are adjusted, where the brain fine-tunes how strongly you react to potential outcomes, where fear responses are calibrated, where attachment bonds are reinforced or softened. This is why chronic sleep disruption has such profound psychological effects. Without access to this internal recalibration space, emotional responses become rigid. Anxiety increases. Mood regulation deteriorates. The mind loses flexibility. It is not that the unseen world produces sanity. It is that it prevents instability. There is evidence that REM sleep allows the brain to decouple emotion from memory. By reactivating emotionally charged memories in a low norepinephrine environment, the brain can revisit those memories without triggering full stress responses. Over time, the emotional charge weakens. This is how trauma heals slowly and imperfectly. The unseen world is not kind, but it is adaptive. It does not erase pain, it integrates it. This integration requires a strange condition, partial amnesia. If the emotional processing that occurs during sleep were fully accessible to waking consciousness, it could overwhelm the self. Imagine reliving every fear with full emotional intensity while awake. Imagine exploring every alternate life path consciously. The cognitive load would be unsustainable. Forgetting is the firewall. The unseen world operates below awareness because awareness would interfere. Yet, forgetting is never complete. The results leak through subtle shifts in perception, changes in emotional tone, altered intuitions, a sense of readiness or unease without explanation. You do not remember the simulations, but you remember the conclusions. This suggests that human consciousness is layered. The narrative self you experience during the day is only one layer. Beneath it operates a system that does not speak in words but in adjustments. The unseen world is not irrational. It is pre-rational. It predates language. It predates abstract reasoning. It evolved to manage complexity long before conscious thought existed. In this light, the place you go every night is not a strange detour from reality. It is a return to a more ancient mode of processing, a mode that modern life rarely allows space for. Artificial lighting, irregular schedules, constant stimulation, and chronic stress all disrupt access to this place. The brain still tries to enter it, but the transitions become fragmented. The simulations become shallow. Emotional processing remains incomplete. The result is a waking mind burdened by unresolved signals. This may explain why the modern world feels mentally exhausting in a way previous eras did not. The unseen world is starved. Yet, when conditions allow, it reasserts itself. When you finally rest deeply, dreams intensify. When emotional strain peaks, the unseen world becomes vivid, insistent, sometimes disturbing. It is the brain demanding time to do its work, not to entertain you, not to inform you, but to keep you functional. The place you go every night is not a mystery realm separate from science. It is a core component of how the human mind survives complexity. It is where meaning is adjusted before it becomes belief. It is where fear is rehearsed before it becomes reaction. It is where identity is softened before it becomes rigid. And it does all of this quietly, without permission and without asking to be remembered. By the time the sun rises, the place you went to no longer exists in any accessible way. Its landscapes dissolve. Its narratives collapse. Its logic evaporates. The brain does not archive it like a book on a shelf. It erases the scaffolding and keeps only the structural changes. This is why waking feels so abrupt. One moment you are immersed in a world that feels complete and unquestionable. The next you are back inside a body, inside a room, inside a version of reality that insists on continuity. The transition is so fast that it creates the illusion that nothing happened at all. But something always did. Neuroscience has learned that the most important outputs of sleep are not experiences, but alterations. Synaptic weights adjusted by fractions of a percent. Emotional thresholds nudged slightly up or down. Predictive models refined just enough to improve future behavior. These changes are microscopic, but they accumulate. You wake up not with memories, but with biases. You feel calmer about something that once triggered anxiety. You feel uneasy about something you cannot explain. A problem that seemed impossible the night before now has an obvious solution. A creative idea arrives fully formed, without origin. These are not coincidences. They are the residue of work completed in a place you cannot consciously revisit. The brain does not bring back the dream because the dream was not the product. The product was adaptation. This reframes the entire mystery. The place you go every night is not hidden because it is dangerous or forbidden. It is hidden because it is incompatible with the demands of waking life. Consciousness requires stability. The unseen world requires flexibility. They cannot fully coexist. This separation is enforced chemically, electrically, and structurally. It is one of the most carefully maintained boundaries in the human nervous system. When it weakens, the consequences are profound. Hallucinations blur waking and dreaming. Dissociation fragments identity. Severe sleep deprivation produces paranoia, emotional collapse, and loss of meaning. These are not failures of imagination. They are failures of containment. The boundary exists for a reason, and yet the boundary is not absolute. Every so often something crosses it. A symbol appears in art that feels ancient and personal at the same time. A scientific insight arrives not through logic, but through intuition. A fear dissolves without confrontation. A decision feels right before it can be justified. These moments are often described as inspiration, intuition, or insight, but they are better understood as exports. Material processed in the unseen world, delivered in a form the waking mind can tolerate. Civilizations have always sensed this. Mythologies placed gods in dreams. Philosophers treated sleep as a rehearsal for death. Early scientists suspected that imagination was not a flaw, but a feature of intelligence. Even today we speak of sleeping on, a decision, acknowledging that something important happens when conscious control is surrendered. Modern science strips away the mysticism but leaves the wonder intact. The place you go every night is not supernatural. It is not a parallel dimension. It is not evidence of anything beyond the brain. And yet, it is one of the most extraordinary processes the universe has produced. A system capable of generating entire realities, dissolving them, and using the results to fine-tune a conscious self, all without awareness, language, or memory. The universe is vast, cold, and largely indifferent. Most of it cannot produce meaning at all. But in small pockets, under precise conditions, matter organizes itself into systems that can simulate worlds, experience them, and learn from them. You are one of those systems. And every night you temporarily become something else, not asleep, not awake, but somewhere in between, where the rules loosen just enough for change to occur. You will never fully remember where you went. You are not meant to. Memory would interfere. Interpretation would distort. Attention would destabilize the process. Instead, you are meant to wake up functional, slightly altered, quietly prepared. The place you go every night does not care if you believe in it. It does not require understanding. It does not leave evidence you can point to. It only leaves effects. And those effects shape your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and your future in ways you will never completely trace back to their source. Tonight, the transition will happen again. The senses will fade. The boundary will open. The unseen machinery will begin its work. And by morning, you will return, convinced that nothing happened at all. That is the final trick. Because the most important journeys of your life happen in a place you will never remember visiting.